They thought they had crushed every threat in the galaxy, until a single human diplomat reminded them of Rule 1, and the Empire realized they had just celebrated their own doom. The celebration stretched across the Empire's capital like a storm of light and sound. Towers of glass and steel pulsed with banners shimmering in alien hues, and the skies above burned with firework-like displays from warships returning in triumph. The Zareth Empire, a civilization that prided itself on dominance, had just crushed another rebellion on a distant colony world. To them, it wasn't just a victory, it was proof that no one in the galaxy could ever challenge their rule. Inside the Grand Victory Hall, thousands of alien dignitaries gathered. Their bodies were scaled, furred, or plated, each species distinct, yet all united under the iron rule of the Zareth. The music thundered like drums of war. Goblets clinked and laughter rang out as the Empire's soldiers boasted of the lives they had taken, the cities they had leveled, and the species they had subjugated. It was a celebration drenched in arrogance. But in one shadowed corner of the hall, humans sat quietly. They were not laughing nor raising their glasses. They were observing. Earth had sent only a small delegation. No soldiers, no fleets, just a handful of people. Yet their presence was enough to draw curious and uneasy glances from those around them. Humanity had a reputation, one that whispered through the galaxy like a ghost story. Few dared to speak of it, but every species remembered Rule 1, even if they pretended to forget. Among the humans was Daniel Carter. He was not a warrior, not a general, not the kind of man who looked like he could bring fear into the hearts of an empire. His suit was plain gray, his hair beginning to gray at the edges, his face calm and unreadable. If anything, he looked like an ordinary man one might pass in the streets of any city on Earth. But those who truly understood humanity knew that appearances often hid something far more dangerous. At his side stood Olivia Brooks. Younger than Carter by at least a decade, her eyes were sharper, her stance less forgiving. She was an intelligence officer, trained to see danger before it struck. Every flicker of alien eyes across the room, every subtle movement of a hand toward a concealed weapon, every shifting posture of the commanders at the long tables, she noticed it all. Where Carter radiated calm, Olivia radiated readiness, as if she expected the celebration to twist into something else at any moment. The Empire's leaders had not invited the humans to celebrate. No, they had summoned them as trophies, as witnesses to Zareth power. To them, the humans were nothing more than representatives of a species that stayed quiet on the edges of galactic politics. But what the Empire forgot, what arrogance had blinded them to, was that humans never came anywhere without purpose. Daniel sipped the alien wine placed before him, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. He listened as one alien officer bragged about how their ships had rained fire on civilian cities, how rebels had begged for mercy before being slaughtered, how the Zareth flag now flew over yet another conquered world. Every boast was louder than the last, every tale bloodier. The hall roared with applause as though cruelty itself was the highest form of honor. And through it all, the humans remained silent, observing, waiting. The Zareth did not understand it yet, but this silence was not weakness. It was the calm before a storm. The celebration of victory was just beginning, but for the Empire it would not end the way they thought. The noise of the hall swelled as more commanders arrived, draped in armor that gleamed under the light of chandeliers forged from crystal mined on conquered worlds. The Empire celebrated not just its military strength but its cruelty, each tale of annihilation retold with pride. Servants rushed to refill goblets, alien musicians pounded out rhythms that mimicked the march of war fleets, and the scent of roasted creatures unfamiliar to human senses filled the air. Daniel Carter sat quietly, letting the spectacle unfold. He had been chosen by Earth Council for this mission, not because he enjoyed such gatherings, but because he could endure them. He understood how to listen, how to wait, and most importantly, how to speak only when silence had done its work. Olivia Brooks remained a step behind him, her posture crisp and her eyes sharp. She wasn't there to drink, to smile, or even to speak unless absolutely necessary. Her role was simple: to see everything and to remember it. The Empire thought they were showing humans a display of strength. In reality, they were revealing every weakness, every crack hidden beneath their pride. At the far end of the hall, the doors opened again. A hush fell over the gathering as High Commander Zarek entered. Towering nearly 3 meters tall, encased in ceremonial armor, his presence alone commanded the room. His eyes, cold and reptilian, scanned the hall before locking on the humans. His mouth curled in something between a grin and a sneer. "Behold," Zarek declared, his voice booming through the chamber, amplified by unseen speakers. "The Empire stands unchallenged. The rebellion on Velos has been broken, their leaders executed, their cities erased. Let this day be remembered as proof that resistance is futile." The crowd erupted in cheers, stomping their feet and pounding the tables. Goblets spilled, banners swayed, and the celebration surged into frenzy. But Zarek was not finished. He raised a massive hand, and the hall fell silent once more. "And now," he continued, turning toward Daniel Carter and Olivia Brooks, "we welcome our human guests. You sit in silence while we celebrate. But perhaps you would like to share what Earth thinks of our Empire's glory. Tell us, human, what do your people think of true power?" Every gaze in the hall shifted at once. Thousands of alien eyes fixed on Carter. The music stopped. The laughter died. Even the servants froze in place, waiting. Daniel did not rise immediately. He set his goblet down with deliberate care, then lifted his eyes to meet Zarek's. His expression revealed nothing. No fear, no anger, just calm. The kind of calm that made the Empire's commanders uneasy, though they didn't know why. Olivia's jaw tightened, her gaze sweeping across the hall. She could feel it, the tension rising, the shift in the air. She had been briefed on what might happen here, but watching it unfold in real time sent a quiet thrill through her nerves. The Empire thought they were mocking humanity, but they were unknowingly setting the stage for something else entirely. The silence stretched. Seconds felt like minutes. The aliens leaned closer, hungry for Carter's response, and finally, Daniel Carter stood. He adjusted his suit jacket, glanced once at Olivia, then looked up at High Commander Zarek. His voice, when it came, was steady and unhurried, carrying easily across the great hall. "You want to know what Earth thinks of your Empire's power?" he asked. His tone wasn't mocking, wasn't fearful. It was something else, something that made even the bravest of Zareth officers lean back in their chairs without realizing why. The celebration, which had been built on arrogance and pride, was about to take a very different turn. The hall was silent now. Even the banners seemed to hang motionless in the heavy air, as if the entire Empire held its breath. High Commander Zarek leaned forward on his throne of black metal, his eyes gleaming with curiosity and malice. Around him, the other dignitaries watched the lone human, wondering what arrogance would make a fragile species speak in the presence of galactic conquerors. Daniel Carter clasped his hands behind his back, standing tall but unthreatening. He allowed the silence to stretch just long enough that the crowd began to stir with unease. Then he began to speak. "Empires rise. Empires fall. That is the way of history," he said, his voice even, measured, each word carefully chosen. "Yours is not the first to call itself invincible. Yours is not the first to believe that fear and destruction are proof of strength." Zarek's grin widened. "We do not believe," he rumbled. "We know we erase resistance. We break civilizations. The galaxy kneels before us." Daniel tilted his head, his eyes locked with Zarek's. "And yet, you ask what Earth thinks. Why? If you are so certain, why does our silence disturb you?" A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Olivia Brooks stood perfectly still at Daniel's side, her heart steady, though her trained eyes caught the flicker of doubt moving across the alien commanders' faces. Daniel took a step forward, his shoes echoing on the polished stone floor. "You celebrate victory tonight, Commander. But let me remind you of something. Rule 1. At those words, the room froze. Glasses stopped halfway to lips. Fingers that had been tapping the tables now curled into fists. A few alien dignitaries exchanged uneasy glances, the color draining from their faces. Zarek's grin faltered. He leaned forward slowly. "Rule 1? He repeated the words low and uncertain. "Yes," Daniel said, his voice calm, his expression unchanging. "Never provoke humanity." The words struck like a thunderclap. The hall erupted into whispers, thousands of voices colliding, some in confusion, others in fear. Zarek slammed a fist on the armrest of his throne, silencing them instantly. He sneered, trying to mask the tremor in his voice. "Empty words. Human legends meant to frighten children. Tell me, Diplomat, What makes you think your fragile world deserves to speak of rules to an empire such as ours? Daniel did not flinch. He did not raise his voice. He simply spoke, and the quiet authority in his words chilled the room. Because every empire that forgot Rule 1 is gone, their fleets shattered, their worlds erased, their names erased from memory, save for the warning they left behind. Never provoke us. The whispers rose again, louder now, tinged with panic. Olivia could see it clearly. The commander shifting uneasily, the servants retreating to the shadows, the dignitaries trying to remember all the stories they had dismissed as myth. The Zareth Empire, for all its power, had just been reminded of something greater than their pride, a law carved into the galaxy by fire and blood. Daniel let the silence settle once more. Then with deliberate calm he picked up his goblet, took a slow sip and set it down again. "Celebrate tonight," he said softly, "but remember Rule 1. Your future depends on it." And with that he sat back down as if nothing had happened. The entire hall felt colder. The silence in the hall was no longer simple quiet. It was weight, a suffocating presence that pressed down on every commander, every dignitary, every soldier who had been laughing and boasting only minutes before. The memory of Daniel Carter's words, "Never provoke humanity," clung to the air like smoke after a battlefield fire. High Commander Zarek tried to reclaim the moment. His claws tapped against the armrest of his throne, each click echoing like the beat of a war drum. His voice came low and sharp. "Stories, human myths. You think to frighten the Empire with children's tales?" But there was no laughter this time. No applause to back him. The commanders shifted in their seats, their eyes avoiding his. Whispers hissed from one table to another, too soft to be heard clearly but filled with unease. The bravado of the Empire was unraveling thread by thread. Olivia Brooks noticed it instantly. The subtle tremors of hands, the tightened jaws, the way several officers kept glancing at the humans with wide, darting eyes. She could almost feel the fear rippling through the hall, though most of them didn't even understand why it gripped them so suddenly. Rule 1 was not just a phrase. It was a memory buried deep in their species, passed down like a warning in the dark, a reminder that the galaxy had once watched humanity fight, and it had not forgotten the aftermath. Daniel Carter didn't press the moment. He didn't stand again, didn't raise his voice, didn't speak another word. His silence now was as calculated as his speech. He sipped his drink slowly, his posture relaxed, his expression unreadable. That calmness was more terrifying than any threat could have been. One alien dignitary finally broke the tension. His voice shook as he spoke across the table to his neighbor. "The Velari. They thought themselves eternal once, and yet they vanished. Their worlds empty, their fleets ashes." Another leaned in, whispering, "And the Terran Dominion. Do you remember? They struck at Earth once. No one has heard their name in centuries." The whispers spread faster now until the entire hall was alive with nervous murmurs. Zarek slammed his fist on the throne again, his voice rising with anger that barely concealed fear. "Enough! Humanity is weak!" They hide behind their council, their words, their so-called diplomacy. "Do not let this relic frighten you." But even as he roared, his words fell flat. The commanders no longer looked at him with pride. They looked at him with doubt. Olivia caught Daniel's faint smile at the corner of his lips. He had said what needed to be said. The seed of fear had been planted, and no force in the galaxy could uproot it now. The Empire had celebrated victory tonight, but instead of songs of conquest, they were left with silence, unease, and the shadow of a law older and stronger than their arrogance. Rule 1. Never provoke humanity. The hall had once been alive with music, laughter, and the pounding of war drums. Now it was a cavern of whispers and shadows. The air felt heavy, almost charged, as if every alien in the room feared that the walls themselves might remember Daniel Carter's words. Olivia Brooks stood still at Daniel's side, her eyes sharp, her posture calm. She knew the mission was already complete. The moment Carter spoke Rule 1 aloud, the celebration had ended. What remained now was the fallout, and it was written across every face in the chamber. One commander, his uniform still stained with the dust of recent battles, leaned toward his neighbor. His voice trembled. "It cannot be true. Humans do not have the fleets. They do not have the weapons." His neighbor's response was little more than a whisper. Then explain why the Velari Empire disappeared in a single cycle. Explain why the Tehran Dominion's name has been scrubbed from every star chart. These are not myths. They are warnings. Another officer stood abruptly, his chair scraping across the polished floor. He pointed a clawed hand toward Daniel. If humanity is so dangerous, why are they here? Why do they not conquer? Why do they send this diplomat? Daniel looked up at him then, his expression calm, his voice steady as ever. Because we do not seek conquest. We do not raise fleets to expand our borders. We want peace. But when others force our hand, when survival leaves us no choice, we do not stop. We do not forgive. We do not forget. That is why Rule 1 exists. The officer's voice cracked as he tried to answer, but no sound came. He sat down heavily, his hands trembling. High Commander Zarek growled low in his throat, but the sound no longer carried authority. He looked around the hall, searching for support among his commanders. None met his gaze. Even those who had cheered his boasts of conquest minutes earlier now stared at their cups, their plates, their hands, anywhere but at their leader. Olivia felt the shift like a knife cutting through the room. The Empire's greatest strength, its unity through fear, was faltering. Fear was still present, yes, but it was no longer fear of Zarek. It was fear of the human sitting quietly at the edge of the hall. Daniel leaned back in his chair, his calm presence filling the silence once again. We have no quarrel with you. Humanity does not seek to erase you, but provoke us, threaten our people, our world, and the empire you celebrate tonight will be nothing but dust in the memory of the stars. The words landed like a final blow. The commanders who had fought countless wars, who had slaughtered entire civilizations without hesitation, sat frozen. They believed themselves predators. But now, for the first time, they felt the chill of being prey. The celebration was over. The music would not return. The taste of victory had curdled into the bitterness of dread. Rule 1 was no longer a forgotten legend whispered on the edges of galactic memory. It was alive again, spoken in a hall that would never forget it. As the humans finally rose to leave, the hall remained unnaturally still. No music, no laughter, no clinking of glasses. Only the sound of Daniel Carter's measured footsteps against the polished stone floor. Olivia Brooks followed close behind, her eyes sweeping the room one last time, cataloging every expression, every twitch of unease, every flicker of fear. The commanders who had once shouted with pride now sat stiffly, staring at the empty space where the humans had been. Zarek himself remained in his throne, claws resting on the black metal arms, his jaw tight. His eyes flickered with rage, disbelief, and a shadow of fear he could not hide. He had thought this day a celebration of his empire's dominance. Instead, it had become a quiet reckoning. Every whisper in the hall spoke the same truth. Humanity had come, had spoken, and had left without raising a hand. Yet the Empire knew deep in its bones that one wrong move, one act of arrogance, could awaken a force far greater than they could imagine. Daniel and Olivia walked past the stunned dignitaries toward the waiting shuttle. Daniel's voice was soft, almost conversational as he spoke to Olivia. They'll remember this. Not just the words, but the feeling, the fear. It will linger far longer than any battle. Olivia nodded. Do you think they'll heed it? She asked quietly. They will, Daniel replied. Or they will learn the hard way. Outside, the capital of the Zareth Empire stretched in gleaming towers beneath a sky filled with orbiting ships. The human's shuttle lifted, silent and efficient, slipping through the atmosphere like a shadow. Below them, the Empire's leaders tried to resume their feast, but it was impossible. No song could cover the echo of Rule 1. No laughter could erase the knowledge that humanity's calm warning carried more weight than any fleet. Back in the hall, Zarek finally rose, his massive frame casting a long shadow across the floor. He turned to his commanders, demanding explanations, plans, any sign of strategy, but found only uncertain eyes, hands trembling slightly at the edges of tables. The Empire had celebrated, yet the taste of victory was gone, replaced by a deep, gnawing unease that would not fade. Daniel Carter and Olivia Brooks were already gone from sight, their presence lingering only in memory. The humans had reminded the galaxy of a truth older than empires, older than wars. Provoke humanity at your own peril. Rule 1 was no threat. It was fact. And in the quiet aftermath of the celebration, The Empire understood finally that they had witnessed a power they could neither conquer nor predict. Victory meant nothing. Fear meant everything, and the galaxy would remember that Earth's defenders were patient, precise, and unstoppable when pushed. The shuttle disappeared into the stars, leaving behind silence, dread, and the chilling realization that humanity's shadow stretched far beyond what any empire could ever imagine. The shuttle carrying Daniel Carter and Olivia Brooks cut silently through the upper atmosphere, leaving behind the Zareth capital in a shimmer of heat and light. Below, the Empire's towers, once symbols of absolute dominance, now seemed smaller, fragile even in the shadow of a truth they could not deny. The humans had not fired a single shot. They had not summoned a fleet, nor unleashed a weapon of mass destruction. Yet the entire Empire trembled, the echo of Rule 1 hanging in the air like a storm that had just passed but left ruin in its wake. Inside the shuttle, Daniel leaned back against the wall, his hands resting calmly on his lap. His eyes stared at the viewports, watching the gleaming cities shrink beneath them. "They don't understand," he said quietly. Olivia's gaze followed his, her mind already dissecting the reactions of the commanders they had left behind. "They think fear can be measured in fleets and cities burned. But it can't, not with humans. Fear lives in memory and legend, in the shadow of what they've never faced but are certain exists." Olivia nodded. "Do you think they'll tell the others? Spread the warning?" "They will," Daniel said. "They have no choice. Rule 1 is not just law. It is survival. And they've just been reminded how fragile they are." Meanwhile, back on the surface, the hall of the Zareth Empire was silent, almost unnaturally so. The commanders who had moments before laughed and boasted now sat frozen in their chairs, goblets untouched, conversations stifled. Zarek, towering above them, felt a strange tension grip his massive chest. His claws drummed against the throne armrest, but the sound, once commanding, now seemed hollow. Even his voice, when he tried to roar, lacked its usual authority. "What is this?" one officer muttered under his breath, eyes darting nervously toward the human's vacant corner. Why do I feel it?" "It is Rule 1, another whispered, almost reverently, though fear laced his tone. "We thought it a story, a warning from the past, but it is alive, and it speaks now." The words spread quickly, murmurs evolving into hushed conversations, which in turn became open discussion, though no one dared look at Zarek directly. The Empire's leaders had always prided themselves on their control, their ability to unify countless species under the banner of conquest. Yet here, in the wake of a diplomat's words, they felt an unfamiliar sensation: vulnerability. Zarek rose, trying to restore order. "You will sit. You will maintain discipline." His roar echoed, but it fell flat. The commanders shifted uneasily, glancing at each other instead of obeying. Some even whispered that it was better to remain still, to watch, to learn, rather than act. The unspoken agreement spread silently through the room. The humans were not threats to be faced with weapons, but something far more dangerous, something that lived in patience and precision. Outside the hall, the Empire's city shimmered under the late afternoon suns. Smoke rose faintly from the training grounds where young cadets sparred with practice weapons. Market districts bustled with aliens trading goods, oblivious to the tension inside the palace. Yet even those who did not witness the humans' words would feel their impact eventually. Fear, once awakened in the minds of leaders, could not be contained. It spread like wildfire, igniting doubt, suspicion, and an uneasy caution in every corner of the Empire. In the council chambers adjacent to the throne hall, Zarek's inner circle convened hastily. The room was dimly lit, the walls adorned with trophies from countless campaigns, symbols of power now seeming hollow. "We underestimated them," one commander admitted, voice low and trembling. "We thought they were small, weak, insignificant." Zarek's eyes narrowed. "No, we did not underestimate them. We merely ignored the warnings." "That is different, is it?" another said, shifting nervously. They spoke with calm. Not anger, not threat, and yet the fear in this room is undeniable. We have crushed worlds before. We have annihilated species. How can one species, inspire this much dread? Zarek remained silent for a long moment, staring at the table. The memory of Carter's words, so measured and deliberate, returned to him. Every empire that forgot Rule 1 is gone. Their fleets shattered. Their worlds erased. Their names erased from memory. He felt a chill, not just in his scales but in the depths of his mind. The Empire had always known it could be challenged, but never like this. Never by patience, by silence, by calm words. In the corridors beyond, junior officers discussed what they had witnessed in hushed tones. Some argued that the humans were bluffing, that no species could wield such quiet power without displaying force. Others disagreed vehemently, recounting ancient tales of humanity's wrath, of fleets that had struck without warning, of civilizations that had vanished when provoked. The legend of Rule 1 had become real again. Not a story, not a cautionary fable, but a law that could not be ignored. By nightfall, the Empire's capital felt different. The once vibrant streets, alive with music and laughter, seemed muted, as if the city itself had absorbed the tension from the palace. Even the alien merchants, unaware of the humans' presence, moved more cautiously. Soldiers patrolling the outer gates paused more frequently, scanning the horizon with unease. Fear, subtle yet pervasive, had seeped into every corner. Zarek retreated to his private chambers, towering figure casting long shadows across the room. He moved mechanically, touching relics of conquest, trophies from worlds conquered, yet none brought him satisfaction. The words of Daniel Carter echoed in his mind like a drumbeat. Rule 1: never provoke humanity. He had faced countless enemies, countless rebellions, yet the memory of this human, sitting silently amidst their triumph, unsettled him more than any battlefield ever had. In his private reflection, Zarek realized the scale of what had occurred. The Empire had celebrated its greatest victories without understanding that a single human presence could render all that achievement meaningless in a moral sense. The humans had not threatened. They had merely reminded. And that reminder carried weight heavier than the combined fleets of countless conquered worlds. Far from the Empire, in the cold vacuum of space, the human's shuttle glided silently between stars. Daniel Carter monitored the instruments, his expression calm, while Olivia Brooks scanned the star systems ahead. Both were silent, but the tension of the Empire they left behind hung between them. Every decision, every word had been calculated to leave an imprint, and now that imprint would fester and grow. "I think they understand," Olivia said finally, breaking the silence. Daniel nodded. "They do. The seed has been planted. They will remember this moment tonight for years, and when the time comes, when a future leader ignores it, they will regret it." Meanwhile, back in the palace, the Zareth Council attempted to reconvene. Attempts at conversation stumbled over doubt. Strategic decisions, normally made with precision and certainty, were now delayed as leaders second-guessed every possibility. Every plan, every directive was weighed against the unspoken threat of humanity's patience and power. Arguments erupted in some chambers, accusations flew, and yet no one dared act rashly. The silence Daniel Carter had cultivated now ruled the Empire more effectively than any army ever could. Stories began to circulate within the ranks. Whispers of the humans' calm demeanor, their patience, their confidence in survival spread like wildfire. Some commanders suggested immediate reconnaissance to study Earth's defenses. Others argued that even that would be foolish. Humans did not need fleets to protect their world. They had endured countless threats without the galaxy ever noticing. And when provoked, they destroyed with precision and finality. In the quiet of his chamber, Zarek stared at the star charts projecting the reaches of the galaxy. Every system, every conquered world, every defeated enemy suddenly felt tenuous. He had always assumed dominance was absolute. Now he realized it was fragile, fleeting, dependent not only on fleets or weapons, but on the careful management of a species he had once dismissed as irrelevant. The realization gnawed at him deeper than any battlefield wound. Humans were patient. Humans were intelligent. Humans remembered. And humans were not like any other species he had faced. They did not crave territory. They did not crave conquest. They only craved survival, and woe to anyone who forced them into a corner. Throughout the Empire, officers who had laughed and boasted were now haunted by the memory of Daniel Carter's calm eyes. The way he had spoken without threat, without aggression, yet still conveyed the absolute certainty of humanity's capacity to strike. No weapon, no fleet, just the promise of survival carried to its furthest extreme. The city outside continued its life, unaware of the shadow that had just passed through its halls. Markets hummed, transporters hummed, and citizens went about their business, oblivious to the shift in power that had just occurred. But the Empire's leaders would never forget. The caution would remain, insidious and unrelenting. Days passed. The humans remained in orbit for a short time before departing for Earth, leaving behind a trail of whispered fear. Zareth fleets moved cautiously. Strategies were revised and lessons from the past, stories of vanished empires and failed conquests, were revisited with renewed seriousness. The name Daniel Carter would circulate among commanders not as a diplomat, but as a symbol, a reminder of what lay hidden in patience, calm, and the promise of humanity's wrath. Months later, the Empire continued its rule outwardly unchanged. Yet a subtle tension pervaded every decision, every conquest. Plans were double-checked, troops were briefed on historical warnings, and no one dared speak of humans lightly. Rule 1 had shifted from legend to doctrine, a cautionary law, an invisible hand shaping policy, strategy, and thought. Far across the stars, Daniel Carter and Olivia Brooks returned to Earth, carrying with them the knowledge that they had reminded the galaxy why humans could never be underestimated. They had not fired a single shot, yet they had reshaped an empire's perception forever. In every council chamber of the Zareth Empire, in every officer's quarters, and in every strategy room, the echo remained: never provoke humanity. The lesson was simple, terrifying, and absolute, and the galaxy remembered.